KELPradio.com. 915 TALK.
The world is looking at El Paso.
What will we say to the world? From the KELP studio in El Paso, this is 915 Talk.
And now your host.
Good afternoon, beautiful citizens of the borderland. This is 915 Talk, and I am your host, Andy Frecka. And normally at this point in the conversation, I say it's another beautiful day in the borderland. But today, we only broadcast the truth out of KELP. And so I'm going to say it's a blustery day in the borderland. What would you say, Kenny, on the board? What word would you use to describe the weather we are experiencing outside right now?
Blustery's too big. I'd keep it simple, 5 letters. Dusty.
Dusty? Okay. What about boisterous?
I don't have a word of the day calendar like you.
Okay, I cheated. I looked up a thesaurus online. Tempestuous, squally, blowing.
Wow.
And it is quite a day out there, but we continue to broadcast, and congratulations to our listeners for tuning in and feeding your mind, feeding your soul.
Right. You got to remember that this is a free show. Quit using the $5 words.
Yes. You're feeding your mind, feeding your soul through amplitude modulation at 1590 AM, frequency modulation at 95.9 FM in El Paso, also 89.3 FM up in
New Mexico.
Las Cruces, which I assume is also blustery today.
Probably, because it's coming from there, isn't it? The dust usually comes from them.
Yeah, all from Las Cruces. That's where the dust is coming from.
Just kidding, Las Cruces. Just kidding.
So, and you know why else today is special, other than the weather outside?
Why is that?
Well, this is our first week where 915 Talk is daily.
This is the first Thursday.
Yeah, and that's right, Kitty, on the board. This is the first Thursday. But also, this is the first day we've been live. The others have been pre-records, which is okay. But today we are live.
Yes, we like live.
And it is March 6th, year of our Lord 2025. And we have a very special guest today. Do you know why she's special, Kenny, on the board?
Because she's the unique expression of an extensively creative God.
Close. You were close. She is the unique expression of an endlessly creative God. But she's also very adventurous because she drove through that weather to be here today. But
that is adventurous, yes.
I was kind of nervous, and when she pulled up, I was like, "Get out of that weather, get into the radio station," and the radio station is not well insulated, so it's kind of dusty in here as well.
Right. Yes, we can smell it.
But you know what we're going to be talking about today, Kidney, on the board?
I have no idea. I just know she's a CEO.
Yeah, she is a CEO. That's right. But I guess we will talk about that. But what we're going to talk about is taking care of your parents.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that something that you have something to say anything about?
Me? No, I didn't move to El Paso to help take care of my mom or anything like that.
Yeah, I think
not
you
at
did.
all.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot to talk about with this. But she is the CEO and also the founder of Caring Companions, which happens to be impact partners of KELP.
Right. Yes,
so
I know.
We're very grateful.
I hear
for
them
that.
on the weekends.
Yeah, and they have a great ad that we run.
Yes,
voiced over by the greatest voice in El Paso, my wife. But just sharing about what they do. They provide home care services.
Yes.
Yeah, and so assisted living, personal care, senior care for those who need care but want to stay at home. So really appreciate the work they do. And so with further ado, today we're back on Facebook Live. We've had some technical issues over the past few weeks, but Mac Daddy Del Norte took care of it. We are on Facebook Live. We are on YouTube Live. Just look for KELP Radio if you're tired of listening to the radio and want to watch the radio. But without further ado, let's give a very warm Borderland welcome to the one, the only, Amy Minjarez. Amy, welcome to 915 Talk.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you made it. You made it through all the sand and the wind that I think a lot of our listeners are driving in right now. What would your advice be to people out there on the roads right now?
Stay indoors. if you can. Don't come out.
Don't use
Uber.
it. Yeah, it's pretty funny because this week we have a program called 915 Pray. And we every day at 9:15 a.m. and 9:15 p.m. we pray for the borderland. And this week we've been praying for the drivers. And we were going to call it Pray for Bad Drivers Week, but that didn't seem very Christian.
Well, thanks for praying.
Yeah.
That's how I got here safely.
Yeah, so pray for kingdom drivers is what we called the week, that we would all be kingdom drivers and remember who we are as we're driving
That's
down the
right.
highway. Because there are a lot of flying fish out there. Do you know about the flying fish?
I don't.
Yeah, so you know the Christian symbol of the
yes.
fish on the back of the car? It was always humorous to me, when you're driving down in a 60 mile an hour and a guy passes you at 90 and he has the Christian fish on the back of his car, that's the flying fish. So anyway, it's important for us to maintain our testimony. Kenny on the board's cracking up.
And I was thinking they were called to witness and they were hurrying up to get there so they didn't miss the person.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we're ambassadors of Christ.
That's right. I put a KELP radio bumper sticker on my car.
Well, now you have to drive right.
Yeah, well, I'm only reminded of the bumper sticker after I drive like I still live in Russia. And then I'm like, oh, wait, we don't do that here. So anyway, Amy, it's really good to have you here. And we have a lot to talk about with elder care. Before we went on the air, you were sharing about this is something you've been in for many years, and you founded Care Companions 13 years ago. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's 2012.
Right. And I think when you think of all the ways anyone could spend their life, why did you choose this to be a focus?
It is near and dear to my heart. So my mom is a paraplegic.
Oh, wow.
So many people don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
So growing up with a mother she's very independent. There's a lot that she does for herself, but she got the polio virus when she was about 6 months old. So she lost mobility in her lower limbs. So she hasn't been able to walk since she was a toddler, really.
Wow.
And so it was almost it's very miraculous that she was able to have my sister and I. And just to see her independence as a woman who really couldn't use her lower limbs, and of course my sister and I had to learn how to help her, so we've been caregivers really ever since I can remember.
Wow. Okay. So if I can ask, I guess it's a personal question, was Dad around?
No.
Wow.
So it was tough. It was
right.
tough growing up with a single, in a single mom household. And yeah, it was tough times, but we made it through. God provided. Yeah.
Were there times of prayer back then, or was it just trying to figure life out and not having that understanding?
Both. I think my mom at a very young age taught us to pray. We learned that Jesus was our Lord and Savior at a very young age, and so I didn't go to church because of course with my mom's mobility, we didn't have a car to go to to drive to church. So she just taught us how to pray, and so I had a relationship with the Lord at a very young age. I always spoke to the Lord before I went to bed. So prayer was very important for me, and it was a part of my daily life.
Wow.
I don't think I realized how poor we were growing up because my mother was just so great. She just figured it out. She'd sew our clothes. I don't know. She just made it happen. She's an amazing woman.
That is amazing. I mean, I love this because I didn't know this until just now. And you're running this organization, you're running this business, but your origin story is right in line with what you're doing now. What are some of the things you learned as a child that are useful now in what you're doing?
Sometimes caregiving can be a thankless job.
Right.
So you have to do it for the right reasons.
Okay.
And you have to have compassion. You have to treat people with dignity and respect. Whether it's an individual who's elderly or someone with a disability, you just have to meet people where they're at, and you have to show compassion.
Right. So I when I hear that, I guess the first thing that crosses my mind is, if you're the caregiver, you have to be patient. to me, that's like the first thing that comes to mind.
I know, but
Right.
unfortunately, that's not always the case. I think
Right.
especially when it comes to caregiver burnout.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're if you're providing care for a loved one, say your dad or your mom,
Right.
and you're in it 24/7 without help, you can start to lose that patience because now you're starting to burn out.
Exactly. But what are some of the other things that kind of quantify or define compassion to you?
Well, you have to love people.
Right.
I think you have to love people. And I don't know. I think that's a hard, because not everyone's compassionate,
Right.
And so for me, I guess for me, it comes natural because of my mother, right?
Right.
And so the circumstances that we were in at a very young age, we just had to learn to be patient with her.
Right.
And sometimes, things got difficult.
Right.
But I think that the best advice that I can give someone who's taking care of mom or dad is to also be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Be kind to yourself because
Right.
it's not always easy. And so mom and dad, who are they going to take it out on? The
caretaker.
primary caregiver, which is typically,
The primary caregiver.
yes, which is typically either the daughter or the son.
Right. So that's interesting that you say that. So if there's a situation where there are adult children, let's put it that way, and they're taking care of an elderly parent, it's not the passive child that gets the brunt of perhaps a moment of impatience. It's the primary caregiver.
That's correct.
The one who's passive and not there, doesn't hear any of it, doesn't
That's
know
correct.
about it. That's something I've never thought about. So you're talking about burnout. Do people who are burning out when they're caring for an elderly relative, do they normally recognize that they're burning out?
I think they do, but they feel almost trapped because they feel like they have to provide that care, or who's going to take care of mom or dad. And that's typically because there's other siblings who are not stepping in to help. And so they know that mom or dad or both are depending on that individual. So they feel that they're carrying that weight on their shoulders. So they'll recognize it, but they won't know how to ask for help.
Wow. So there's this whole kind of, tornado of different feelings. And then there's kind of this, the practical side
Exactly.
that's building up. You're interacting with people in these kind of situations every day. What are some of the questions that a family needs to ask themselves as they begin to look around for help?
Are they growing impatient with their loved one?
Mm-hmm.
Are they losing sleep? Are they sleep deprived, right? Because that could be a huge factor in the way they're handling stress.
Yes.
And so I think a lot of times when we come in, there's two different ways that we typically come in. One is mom and dad still want their independence. They don't want their children to take care of them. So we come in and provide as little as 4 hours a day up to 24-hour care. And then there's the other circumstance where a loved one is taking care of mom or dad, but they need that respite care. And so by the time they do call us, they are burned out. They're crying. They're a mess. Depression is even kicking in for them.
Right.
So there's a lot of there's a mix of emotions when it comes to once they get a hold of us to provide that care.
Wow. Yeah. So once someone reaches out to you, like what is the process? Like what happens next? Like I kind of feel like, like I mentioned, we run these ads on KELP for Caring Companions. I kind of feel like people still will only call when they're desperate. They're not going to call until that point. And so that's how I would picture myself. I'm just at the end of my rope, and let's say I'm talking to my wife, like, well, fine, I'll call, and then once that happens, what happens next?
Yeah, that's true. Or their loved one had a fall.
Oh, so it's one or the, so when they fall, then they've lost their mobility. Is that what you're getting
A lot
at?
of times, or they realize, or there's frequent falls, or they realize mom or dad cannot live home alone anymore. We need help.
Safely. Right.
Safely. So they'll call us to provide professional senior care services.
Right.
So typically what we do is we provide a assessment. There's no obligation and there's no charge for the assessment. So either myself or another staff member will go out to the home, and it is a customized care plan. So we'll go over mobility, functional limitations. Do they have dementia? Are they oriented? Can they still make decisions for themselves? We look over diet, tasks that need to be had in the home on a daily basis. So there's an enormous amount of information that we do have to cover when we do the care plan, but that's because we are customizing it according to the individual's needs.
Okay. So you don't just have one kind of system for everybody.
No.
It's tailor-made.
It is tailor-made.
And so the minimum amount of time that you would come in is 4 hours. Is that what you said?
Minimum
4 hours. And that's what you call respite care?
No, it doesn't have to be. So 4 hours a day, up to 24-hour care. An individual can use us once a week for 4 hours. They can use us once a month for 4 hours. So people have the flexibility to tailor their own schedule to their needs, right?
Okay.
So if someone's using us for 4 hours once a week, that could be respite care for an individual.
Okay.
Who maybe the son or daughter is providing care for mom 24/7, and they just need those 4 hours to go out and maybe go to the gym or go grocery shopping. So we take care of mom or dad while they're out. That's not always the case. Sometimes the individual still lives home alone, and they just need a little bit of help.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah, because it's not always that the parent actually lives with the adult
Correct. And a lot of our clients live alone. Not everyone lives with with the daughter or son. Most of our clients, believe it or not, are still living home alone.
Yeah. So I'm guessing there, especially when there's several children and some are more active and some are more passive, there's occasionally a little bit of drama.
Yeah. Definitely. We see it all the time.
Yeah. So what would your advice be to a family? Because, well, let's put it this way. The person who's listening to this and is super excited about what we're talking about is the active child, most likely. What would your advice be to the active child?
I always tell them that they're doing a good job. Mm-hmm. And that really always gets them emotional. Because sometimes that's all you want to hear, that you're doing a good job. You're honoring your mom, your father. And that, again, I said earlier, sometimes caregiving is a thankless job. So they're not getting the thank you from mom and dad.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm by no means an expert in the area of dementia, and this program is purely for informational purposes. We're not giving out medical advice. Anyone who needs medical help needs to find a licensed professional. Of course, that's the disclaimer we usually run in these kind of programs. But as far as dementia, I would think that very often the person experiencing dementia doesn't fully express gratitude all the time.
That's true.
Right?
That is true.
And so you're giving your life, it feels probably like, to your parent. You don't see an end in sight, and no one's saying thank you. Not your parent and not your passive sibling.
Correct.
Right. So you would say to the active child, you're doing a good job.
You're doing a good job.
So Amy,
let us help you.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Let us help you, even if it's just once a week.
Yeah.
So that you can take care of yourself.
Right.
If you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of mom. Right.
Exactly. I agree with that. And what would you say to the passive child? I want to hear what Amy has to say to the passive child.
I have a lot of words to say to that passive child. But one thing I would say is help your siblings.
Right.
Because once your parent is gone, you can't take that time back.
Right.
And you're going to regret not helping out with mom or dad.
Right.
So that's what I would say.
Yeah, it is true. Once that time's over, it's over.
It's over.
Yeah, and it's unfortunately, and in a lot of ways, I guess you could look at it as a gift. These times where you have a chance to give back, so to speak, to your parents.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And most of our seniors, they are isolated. Not all of, for example, several of our clients don't have family members. They never had children.
Oh.
So we become that family member with
right.
them.
Yeah.
And so you do see a lot of isolation, which is why you see a lot of depression too with our elderly population.
Wow, they're on their own. Yeah,
they're on their own.
I remember my dad would often talk about this when he was growing up. back in the 40s. It was not only his family living with his grandparents, but his uncle and aunt were living there. The whole family lived together, but in the year 2025, families have kind of splintered apart. So a lot of families don't have that core, or maybe a career or whatever kind of pulled them apart. No one had an intention in that, but that's the world we live in. So you're kind of stepping up to the plate and being that family during that time. That's
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
our caregivers are amazing. I mean, this is their vocation. They love what they do, and they show that compassion and that they need to for our clients.
Right. Yeah. So we're about to go into a break. We are with Amy Minjarez. Amy Minjarez. She is the CEO and founder of Caring Companions. And when we go into a break, I always say thank you to our impact partners. And today we especially want to thank Caring Companions. And you can find their website, just see kind of a lot of what they do at caringcompanionsep.com, or give them a call, 915-307-6103. And you can start to have that conversation with them if you have especially an elderly family member who is in need of some care. And if you're needing some time off, as we just learned, you need to take care of yourself. So super interesting to talk about. When we get back from the break, I want to talk a little bit more about what you just brought up, your team, just how they're trained, what kind of services they're providing, how that works. As we go into a break, do not touch that dial.
We'll be right back. Don't touch that dial.
915 Talk is listener supported. If you believe that local Christian talk radio is important to our community, please take a moment to prayerfully consider taking part. For all donation options, including secure online giving, visit kelpradio.com and click on the Cornerstone Broadcasting link. Let's reach our neighbors in the borderland together.
915.
Testify.
I used to be a very angry person at the world, being young, having kids, having a wife, being a father, just meeting those expectations that the world puts on you. It's not about the world, it's about, your relationship with God. And I didn't realize that until I was older, and because I was living a life that I shouldn't have been living a sinful life, living for the flesh instead of living for God. I was hanging around people I probably shouldn't have hung around with, drinking, going out to parties, and coming home like 2, 3 in the morning. There was one day that I completely broke down. My son was asking me like, Dad, how come you're like this? How come you're always mad? And yeah, that day I did end up bringing out my Bible. I just broke down and started crying, because I felt the way Paul felt. Read your Bible, guys. If you don't know what to read, go into Proverbs, go into Psalms. God, He's protected me in so many different ways. He's the reason why I'm here. I'm trying to help other people reach God. He could truly change your life. My name is Miguel Ipave. I'm from El Paso. And if Jesus did this for me, I know He could definitely do it for you.
And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb
And by the word of their testimony.
KELPradio.com. We're back. You're listening to 915 Talk.
We are back, and you are listening to 915 Talk. We are live this blustery March 6th, the year of our Lord 2025. We are with Amy Minjarez. She is the CEO and founder of Caring Companions. And it's an elder care, post-operative care service here in El Paso. Amy, you know what? Caring Companions, is that a franchise, or is that just a standalone company?
Standalone company.
Wow. Mm-hmm. And so you started it from scratch?
I did.
Wow.
From the logo to the slogan to you name it.
Uh-huh. And so real basic question, like how many caregivers do you have on your staff?
We have about 100
Whoa, what?
caregivers on
What?
staff. Yeah.
Did you say 100?
100.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Wow. And so how many families are you working with?
About 90.
About 90.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Because some you're, 4 hours a day and some are around the clock.
Correct.
Yeah. And it was funny because a couple of weeks ago I had a friend in here. She's an endocrinologist here in El Paso. And I mentioned Caring Companions, like we often do going into a break. And she's like, well, use them.
Oh,
they're so
great.
great.
That's great. That's good to hear.
Yeah. So it was super fun.
That's awesome. That's good to know.
So super cool. So 100 caregivers. how do you train a caregiver?
Well, we do have a skills lab in our building.
Okay.
So that was one thing that was very important for me to be able to train the caregivers, because in the past, when I did senior care, the company who I worked for was great, but we didn't have an actual lab to be able to train caregivers in. And so what we did for caring companions is we created a lab with a hospital bed. We have a dummy in there. So they have to go through a series of skills training to show us how to do denture care, toileting assistance, ambulation assist.
There are so many things I
many
never
bed
thought
bound
of.
care, how to
Yeah.
change the linens with on an occupied bed, right?
Oh, yeah.
So there's just so much that goes into it.
yeah.
It's about a 4-hour training that they have to do before they go out onto the field.
Right. Okay. So there are so many things to ask, but I want you to walk me through denture care.
Okay.
Yep. So,
Okay. I know.
What is it? What is that? I mean, like, is it safety or just cleaning?
Both. Because
Yeah.
if you drop someone's dentures, guess what's going to happen to those very expensive teeth? They're going to break.
Oh.
So you have to take precautionary measures, and so we have to teach the caregivers how to properly care for dentures when you're
Okay.
transferring them over to the sink, right?
Okay.
Make sure you keep them in the little case that they're in.
Yeah.
Fill the sink with water or put a towel in the sink, so in the event that you drop them, they don't drop on the sink, right, on the hard surface. And so you want to protect people's dentures.
Of course. Yes, of course we want to protect their dentures. It's
So just
something I
simple
never
stuff
thought-
like that people don't think of.
Yeah, I've been in both hospital and hospice situations, and I've seen that magic trick where they change the linens while someone's on the bed, and I will never understand how they do that.
It's a skill, and
Yeah.
you can be taught, and you can
Yeah.
learn it. It is a skill.
Yeah, it's also a magic trick.
It is also a magic trick, sort of, but it is a skill that can be learned.
Right.
You just have to have the right training.
Right. So your support is, from what I understand, it's non-medical support.
It is non-medical support.
So I guess how would you describe what it is and what it isn't? Like, where do you draw the line, and like, do you then work with medical? Or
We do.
Yeah,
So again, it's companionship, meal preparation, medication reminders, light housekeeping. Personal care could include grooming, the oral care that we discussed earlier, bathing, dressing, ambulation assist, toileting.
What's ambulation assist? Like
Helping
get around?
somebody walk. So if they
Okay.
can't get in and out of a wheelchair, you help them get in and out. If it's just a standby assist where you walk with them safely so that they don't fall. Sometimes, most of the time, our elderly, they have their balance is off. So we want to prevent falls. That's important. So ambulation assistance would be important. And the showering, as I mentioned. And incontinent care. Some of our elderly individuals are in diapers and they can't always change their diapers. So the
yeah.
caregiver will do proper care. They'll change diapers.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's quite a lot of things. Is it sometimes like in tandem with medical care?
It is. So we work alongside home health agencies, which is your RNs, physical therapists, and then hospice care as well.
Okay. Wow. Okay. This is an amazing world that I know very little about. So it's interesting to hear all of these different services, and you begin to realize how much care is needed for someone who needs that kind of help. Question about dementia. What is the training for conversation? And I don't mean to be funny by asking this, but sometimes when you're talking to someone who's experiencing that, they might tell you something that's completely untrue. Do you just go along with it, or do you challenge it, or does it depend on the
It
situation?
depends on the situation.
Okay.
But you really have to meet people where they're at. So I'll give you an example. My very first client, at the time, he was hospice and also beginning stages of dementia. At the time, I didn't have enough staff, so I was a caregiver for this individual for a couple of weeks. And he was seeing bugs. He was seeing spiders. He was seeing people in the backyard.
Right.
And I didn't fight him on it. I just said, okay, I'm going to go get some spray. We're going to kill these bugs. And I pretended to kill the bugs. And then I told a man that was outside to leave. And that was enough to help him relax and ease that anxiety. I think what happens if you start fighting them or trying to convince them that these things are not there, you're only going to make things worse. You're going to agitate the individual because in their mind, these things are there.
Right.
So you have to be really careful how you handle situations.
Right. Yeah. It's a whole world. And again, we're not medical professionals here. We're not providing medical advice. It's just informational. But what would some of your advice be if you are getting a little bit concerned about a parent who might be forgetting things, or like what are some of the markers that we should be looking for? How should we be viewing those situations when it's kind of like everything's okay, but maybe a little bit different than the way it used to be?
Yeah, that's a tough one too, because sometimes people don't want the help or they're not ready for the help. So I have an individual who we just started services for. She is independent, so you wouldn't, if you were to see her, you wouldn't think she has dementia.
Right.
But she can't remember. She can still remember certain things like showering, dressing herself, but she's getting lost. So she's still driving, but not too long ago she got lost. She didn't know how to come back home.
Right.
Of course, that's definitely a huge marker, right?
Yeah.
Losing their keys, although I lose my keys all the time, so I don't know.
Right.
But it could encompass several things. Forgetting to eat, right? They're not taking their medication.
Forgetting to eat?
They forget to eat.
I mean, to me, that seems like a pretty big one.
Well, there's no signal, right, from the brain to the stomach alerting that individual it's time to eat. You're hungry. You're getting hungry. So that's another very important factor to consider.
Yeah, because the other things, I mean, like you said, like I also don't remember where I put my keys fairly frequently, but I have never forgotten to eat.
Right.
Yeah.
Me either.
Right. Okay. So what is the training like for your staff for dementia care?
So with dementia care, a lot of it is redirecting. As we discussed earlier, sometimes you have to meet people where they're at, and then sometimes you have to redirect because they will give you the same story, or they'll accuse people of taking their keys, which they lost, not someone else stole the keys. And so there are times where a lot of redirection, and you have to be so patient with people.
Yeah.
And you can't tell them, well, remember.
Yeah, we talked about
We
this.
just talked about this 5 minutes ago,
Yeah.
because no, they don't remember. So
Right.
that's the last thing you want to tell someone
Of
with
course,
dementia.
of
Remember,
course.
Mom?
Yeah.
We talked about this 5 minutes ago.
Right.
Remember where you left the keys?
Yeah.
So you have to be really careful with that type of language.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I feel like I want to share a story from my family lore. My grandfather, when he was 98 years old, snuck out of the old folks' home, got in his electric wheelchair, drove through St. Petersburg, Florida, found his former condo. He had put a brick in the back basket of his electric wheelchair, and he was going to throw it through his condo's window because he was angry about being taken to the old folks' home, but he couldn't remember which condo was his.
That's so sad.
It's so sad, but he was so proud of himself after, and so those are the things we go through, and these personalities come out in a very accentuated form. And I guess the other part of that story where he was extremely proud of himself. So I feel like I could share this story.
We have a similar story. The individual had been moved out of his ranch into a home, and I don't know how he found ways to go back to his home. Well, finally, the new owners had to place a restraining order against him because he was showing up on a daily basis wanting to get into his home. So it's so sad.
Yeah, of course. So with that, I mean, that's a huge part of what you're doing. You're providing care in the home.
Correct.
At what point would you say we can't handle this and this person needs to go into a facility?
So sometimes with dementia, they can get combative, they can get aggressive. There are times where psychiatric help is needed, right? If they're trying to beat up your caregiver, aggressive. If they're able to manage the symptoms with medication, we'll continue to provide services, but there are times where we will let the family member know I think it's time for them to go to an assisted living facility.
So it's like a safety issue,
It is a safety issue.
right?
Or if they cannot provide if they cannot afford 24-hour care,
Right.
then they need to go into a facility, because if that individual needs supervision 24/7 and we're only there 4 hours a day, well, that's not going to be enough to keep an individual safe. So that's when we'll make the recommendation to either foster home or assisted living.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the money part of all this.
Sure.
Yeah. So with caring companions, is it all out of pocket?
It is out of pocket.
Okay.
Unless they have long-term care insurance, like a John Hancock, a commercial policy.
There is such insurance.
There's such insurance.
So long-term care insurance. Okay. So that would be the one exception to
The one exception.
it being out
Otherwise,
of
it is
pocket.
private. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there's also Medicaid, right?
Okay.
So if you fall under a certain income threshold, then you can apply for Medicaid services. And there are agencies out there that will accept that particular payer source and can provide services under the Medicaid program.
Does caring companions? Accept
We are
that?
not.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we are not.
No, I'm not. Yeah, it's just good to know. Kind of curious. Now, when you come out to the house, you said you go through everything with the family. I guess you give them an estimate on the cost.
We do.
Yeah.
So part of the care plan and the assessment that we conduct is also a home safety assessment. Is there loose rugs in the home? Any other features that could cause falls?
Right.
So that's part of that as well. Does the individual have a shower chair? Is there a wheelchair in the home? Is there a cane or walker in the home? So there are other factors that go into that home safety assessment.
Right.
And then, of course, we typically give an individual the rate prior to the assessment, just an estimate, so they know what
Right.
the hourly
Yeah.
wage is. And then
Yeah.
once we're there, we give them a fixed rate based on what we're seeing.
Okay. Let me ask you this. I'm not going to ask you what the hourly rate is. I'm going to say, once you give that amount, are people usually surprised at how high or how low it is?
Well, services can be expensive.
Right.
You know, if you use us 4 hours a day, Monday through Sunday, it's not so expensive. Once
Right.
you get into the 24-hour care,
Oh, yeah.
that's when people typically will
Yeah.
gasp.
yeah. 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 Well, yeah. 24 hours a day, I can only imagine. But are most of your clients, are they asking for help for the 4 hours or the 24 hours, or is it just
In between. It's
all
all
across the
over. It's
board?
all
Yeah.
across the board. We have
Yeah.
clients who just want overnight care,
Oh, okay.
right?
So that they can sleep, right?
Well, they're
Is-
falling at night. That's when the
Yeah.
accidents are happening.
Well, no, I mean so that the adult children can sleep.
If that's the case,
Yeah.
if there's an adult child in the home, yes, that would be part of it as well.
Right.
We,
Yeah.
we just see so many different stories. It could be anything from a loved one needing that respite care at night so that they can sleep and they can take care of mom or dad during the daytime. Or it could be that the individual still lives home alone, doesn't have a sibling, but the accidents are happening at nighttime. So
Right.
people can dictate their schedule,
Right. Yeah.
which is great, because once you go into a nursing home, you don't dictate anything. They dictate everything for you.
Yeah.
So if you're able to stay home as long as you're able to safely with
Yeah.
services such as caring companions, and what a better way to age.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think everyone would absolutely agree with that. I know I've seen elderly relatives when they had to move from the home. It was just like whatever their condition was, it seemed to just become even more intense because they weren't in their familiar environment.
Correct. Especially if they have dementia. If you
Right.
move someone from their home to a different location and they have dementia, their dementia will progress.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So the recommendation is stay at home as long as you can.
Stay at home as long as you can, and if you do have to move your loved one, whatever place you choose, whether it be a foster home or assisted living, try to decorate that place as close as you can to their bedroom or to something that they're familiar with in their home.
Wow. Okay. I never thought of that. This is super interesting. Again, we're with Amy Minjarez, the CEO and founder of Caring Companions. We're learning so much here, and they have 100 caregivers serving 90 families in El Paso. That's so cool. And she shared at the beginning her own personal journey where she grew up in a single mother home with her mother was disabled, so she grew up taking care of her mother, and that's kind of become her life's work. She didn't just choose this to run a business. It's because she genuinely cares for people. You can find them at caringcompanionsep.com. The phone number is 915-307-6103. We're going to go into a break. Do not touch that dial.
We'll be right back. Don't touch that dial.
Are you looking for a Bible teaching church on the west side of El Paso? This is Terry Gray, pastor of Calvary Chapel Sun City and speaker on the Summons broadcast heard each weekday at 5 p.m. here on this station. Calvary Chapel Sun City is located at 960 West Borderland Road on the west side of El Paso. We hold services on Wednesday evenings at 7 and on Sunday mornings at 9 and 11. You can find out more information about us on the web at www.ccsuncity.org. The Lord bless you, my friends. Hey, KLP listeners, this is Pastor Terry Gray of Calvary Chapel Sun City on El Paso's west side. I want to invite you to join me at a new time at 5 p.m. Monday through Friday right here on KELP. If you're driving home at 5 p.m. or doing work around the house or getting your evening started, I invite you to join me as we go through the Bible, chapter by chapter, verse by verse. There is nothing more valuable than the Word of God, so let's invest our time in learning more about it together each day. That's our Bible study program, Summons, each weekday at 5 p.m. right here on KELP.
We're back. You're listening to 915 Talk.
And we're back. This is 915 Talk. We are with Amy Minjarez, the CEO and founder of Caring Companions. Quite an interesting conversation. Let's talk a little bit about El Paso, the world's largest borderplex. El Paso, Juarez. We also have people listening in southern New Mexico. Is there any specificities to elder care in El Paso?
Well, I can tell you this, because we are a border city, there are a lot of times where people are looking for individuals who live across the border. And caregivers. What happens there, and we get the calls that their caregiver couldn't make it to work, right? So now they can't go to work. And so that is a problem when you're hiring private caregivers, whether you're hiring them from, individuals who are coming from across the border or even in El Paso. When you don't hire a caregiver, or when you don't hire an agency, you can end up stuck without a caregiver because you have no backup. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I totally understand what you're saying. It's just a very practical issue. I know some people who have people come across the border to help them out with different things around their house, and they can show up at any time of day,
right?
Just because of different things that are happening. So just the issue of punctuality is pretty big with something like this. Like if you have to leave for work at a certain time, or that's something I would have never thought of. What trends do you see, like, and well, maybe even for our community, the demand for elder care in the coming years?
Well, with the elderly population booming, right, we have a lot of baby boomers, and you have people who still need to work, manage their own families, plus still take care of mom or dad. So they're juggling their own families, plus they have to take care of mom or dad. And so with the elderly population, people are getting older and older, right? We're seeing more of that. There are still people who don't know that there's services like Caring Companions out there where we can come in and supplement. We don't have to take over, and we're not trying to take over, right? We want people to live independent lives in their own home. Age in place is what we're wanting. We're just here to supplement. But if they knew of a company like Caring Companions to provide that supplemental care, that would be huge for them if they knew about the services. The
Right.
problem that I see is that sometimes physicians don't even know about the services.
Oh.
So they're not relaying that information over to the families or to the patients that they're seeing.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this: I didn't know anything about this at all until I met you, and when I look at this, I'm kind of like, my impression of home care was when things are really, really, really bad. You know, to the point of I need to call the White House, like I need to get in touch with the government,
Yeah.
but correct me if I'm wrong. What I'm understanding is, you're helping people in extremely stressful situations where they need help, but it doesn't have to be that bad
It doesn't
to
have
give a
to
call.
be that bad. That's correct. We have clients who use this just for grocery shopping.
Oh, okay.
Once a week, we go do the grocery shopping. We bring it, put it in their fridge, clean out the fridge, throw out any expired items, and sometimes that makes a world of a deal for them.
Do you take them with you, or you just get their list?
Depends. Sometimes
Yeah.
they want to leave their home, and sometimes they don't want to leave their home. So
Yeah.
we can take them with us. That's not a
Right.
problem. We can provide transportation.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's super interesting. So if someone's out there and they're kind of like, well, I might need some help, but I should be good for the next 10 years. I think that's kind of the feeling a lot of people have. What would your word of advice or encouragement be for them?
Let's have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Let's at least have the conversation. Allow us to provide the information. And once you need us, you call us, but at least you're well informed about the services that are out there. You
Right.
don't have to wait 10 years to call us. And typically that does happen, Andy. We'll get the call and we'll say, well, we just want information and we just want to fill out the paperwork. I don't think I'm going to use you all anytime soon, but I just want to have the paperwork. So it's already filled out.
Right.
Well, what they don't realize is that paperwork expires. We can't keep that paperwork forever. So per state regulations, we can only keep that paperwork for 1 year. And then we have to redo paperwork.
Okay.
So what happens is that they will call us. They will make that phone call, whether it's 2 weeks afterwards, a month, 6 months, a year after. The good thing is that they were well informed because they took time to call us.
To go through the process.
They went through the process. They at least have the information. So they, of course, once they need the help, they do think of carrying companions.
Now, if an elderly relative were to fall and, I were to call carrying companions, how long does that process take before a caregiver is actually at my house providing care?
We try to work fast. We really try to move quickly. We tell our, any caller that needs help right away, 48 to 72 hours, depending on how many hours they need. Because if they need 24-hour care, that's a lot of manpower. It takes about 5 to 6 caregivers to be on a 24-hour team.
Oh, wow.
So if we're talking about a 24-hour case, it could take more than 72 hours to form a team. If it's less than that, typically we can facilitate that pretty quickly.
Okay. Yeah. So what is the longest shift for a caregiver then?
12 hours.
Okay.
We've had caregivers work 16 hours, and we have caregivers who do like a 48-hour to 72 hours on shift.
Oh, wow.
They get to sleep. They do get to sleep, and that's something that we do discuss with the family.
Yeah.
But if they want, a lot of times the families want one caregiver 24/7. We try to stay away from that because we know that it could be detrimental to an individual, their livelihood, and they get stressed out. So we want other pairs of eyes in the home besides one caregiver. So we do it for different reasons. But there are times where they want one individual for 48 to 72 hours, and there's times where we can facilitate that.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's quite a thing because the person being cared for gets used to one caregiver.
That's correct.
They start to have their favorite.
That's correct.
These are all the things you have to work through.
It's good and bad.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
There's good and bad.
Yeah,
to that.
yeah. And how do you make sure that your caregivers aren't getting stressed out?
Well, it's important for them to have their days off. So we want to focus on them having their days off. We do have constant communication with our caregivers. They know to call us if they're getting stressed out, and so it's so important to have open communication with your employees.
Right. And are most of your caregivers bilingual or
Bilingual.
Bilingual.
because most of our clients are English speaking only.
Oh, okay. Oh, I did not expect that in El Paso. Most of them are English speaking only. Okay, very interesting. So when you look ahead, what is your dream for elder care in El Paso, caring companions? What do you see in the future? What are you praying for that you don't have?
I have great caregivers now, but you can never pray for more great caregivers that have that heart for the elderly, that have the compassion, because there is a shortage, right? Whether it's caregiver shortage or nurses, right? At the hospital, they're facing their shortages, so there is a shortage altogether in the healthcare industry. So I think my hope and prayer would be to find caregivers with a love and a passion for the elderly.
Right. So you're just praying for more of those caregivers who actually have that heart.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How do you know that someone has the heart and isn't? I'll put this in air quotes. Isn't just looking for a job.
Well, there is a vetting process, right, when we hire our caregivers. And besides the criminal background checks that we have to run, and sex offender and all of that, verifiable references, you typically know. I don't know. I think sometimes just looking at someone, right, you just know that there's something behind that look, right, their eyes. I don't know. Sometimes I just gonna sound goofy, but sometimes I just go with the gut feeling. If they could have great references, their background could check out, but if I have that gut feeling that this person there's just something about that person, I will not hire them just based on that. And I know that sounds silly, but as a Christian, I'm gonna listen to that.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. And then I guess you're looking for feedback from the families you're serving. You're
Absolutely. So
if
that's another thing, quality assurance visits. So we do have a program where once we start services for a client, there's constant follow-up. We don't just say, okay, here are the caregivers, and then we're off hands. No, absolutely not. We're very involved with our clients' care. So we have a quality assurance program, and our client services director will make frequent visits to ensure that the clients are receiving the proper care.
Right. Yeah, it's such a big conversation. Like you said, the population, we're all aging. You know, I've never been as old as I am right now, and that goes for our older relatives, right? And I'll never be this young ever again, sadly. But we are all aging. It's one of those issues that I think a lot of us hope that we never have to deal with. You know, but we will.
We will.
100%.
Yeah.
And so just being well informed in advance, so you're not in that stressful situation. I got to get someone over right now.
Correct.
But just kind of being informed and visiting Caring Companions at caringcompanionsep.com. Just looking at some of those services, finding out what else is out there, just so it's not a stress issue that just suddenly pops up.
Correct.
And I hope that we as a community, as a faith community, and here in El Paso can be known as being people who take good care of our parents, of our elderly loved ones.
We are to honor our parents, right? That's what the Bible teaches.
100%. So just to our audience, I do want to mention tomorrow on 915 Talk, we're going to be talking about school choice in Texas. We'll have the head of the Texas Private School Association. There's a lot of misconceptions out there about what school choice is about. And it's a huge issue. It's going through the legislative process in Austin right now. And the person we're having on tomorrow is in the thick of it. Very informing program. On Monday, we're going to have the El Paso rep for TxDOT talking about, well, the joke is why so many orange barrels and so few workers. But no, we're going to talk about a lot more than that. But that'll be on Monday. On Tuesday, we're going to have District 1 rep from El Paso, Alejandra Chavez, on talking about so many things related to our community. And that's really what we're trying to do here. As 915 Talk goes daily, I believe that, most of our audience is the church. Most of our audience is believers. I looked at the last election and I saw that the church knew all of the national issues but almost none of the local issues. And we need to be better informed here locally. And I hope that those of you who are listening, who are like, who are these crazy religious people who don't know anything about it, that you'll continue to tune in at between 4 and 5 each weekday, and you'll begin to see that the church, that the people who love God are also the people who love the city that we live in, that we're here to love our neighbor and love our city. So that's why 915 Talk is daily. And, today, again, we're with Amy Minjarez of Caring Companions, talking about elder care. There are so many parts of making our community a strong community. As one of our guests said, we are not just to be an island in the middle of the desert, we're to be a beacon of hope. And as we're a strong community, really taking care of our neighbors that God has entrusted us with, or taking care of our elderly relatives, as we're talking about today, that God has entrusted us with, we will become that beacon of hope. So that's why 915 Talk is now daily. It's 5 times the amount of work we were weekly before, but I believe these conversations are important. Amy, really appreciate you coming in
Thank you,
today.
Andy.
And
It's a pleasure.
and there's so much that could be talked about with elder care, but I just loved your story of why you're doing this. It's because you genuinely care about people.
I really do. I have a love for people.
Yeah, and the Lord has made that turn into a not just a successful business, but a way where you're serving many people. You know what hits me, Amy, is the best business advice was given by Jesus. He who wants to be the greatest must become the servant of
true.
all.
Absolutely.
And I see that's what's happening in your life. So that's been so cool to hear about.
Servant leadership.
Yes, and as you serve so many people, it's a blessing.
It is a blessing.
Not for those people and for you. It's so great. Again, thank you for being an impact partner of KELP.
It's my pleasure,
Yeah,
Andy.
so great. And a reminder for those who are listening, it's caringcompanionsep.com. And what's the phone number?
915-307-6103.
Yeah, you could just give them a call, find out what it takes to get started, and let's learn more about taking care of our family. And as we're taking care of our family, let's make sure we're taking care of ourselves.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So again, Amy, thank you for coming in. This has been just a really important conversation, I think, for our listening community. And as we always say at the end, let's learn to love our city, love our neighbor, and give God all the glory. Amen. This has been 915 Talk. You have been listening to 915 Talk on KELP Christian Radio. To listen to past recordings of 915 Talk, just visit KELPradio.com and click on the 915 Talk link. Until next time, love your neighbor, love your city, and give God all the glory.